We're going to talk about the anatomy of a research article. What are the major parts of the research paper that you will be writing? Let's now take a quick look at the anatomy of a research article, and basically we'll look at the pieces of the research article. And each of these pieces you will write for your final report. So you're going to write an abstract, you're going to write the main body of your report, which is the introduction, method, results, and discussion. And we are going to write these piece by piece by piece. So during the course of this semester, you're never going to be writing more than maybe 4 pages at a time. Sometimes you'll be writing 2.5 pages. So for example, the methods is going to be approximately 2.5 pages. The results is going to be approximately 2.5 pages. So we're going to do this really bit by bit to kind of spread the writing out over a longer period of time. It won't seem that daunting when we break it up in that manner. So for the anatomy of a research article, this is the article where I took that sentence from. Looking at perspective pictures from too far, too close, and just right. So I'll break down each little section, and then you can see kind of like where it is in this actual paper that was published. So let's start with the abstract. The first thing that people often read after the title for a research paper is the abstract. And what the abstract is, it's a summary of the research report. And it's a complete summary of a research report. I oftentimes like to use metaphors for research reports that kind of tie them into what they really are, which is a story that you're telling your researcher about scientific truth, but in fact it is a story. And if you think of your research report as a movie, the abstract is a trailer that ruins the ending. So if you've ever seen one of those trailers where you watch it and you're like, well, I guess I don't have to watch the movie anymore because everything was in the trailer, that's exactly what it is. It's a very short little synopsis, but it contains everything. It contains a synopsis of the intro, it contains a synopsis of the methods, a synopsis of the results, and a synopsis of your discussion all in one place. It basically gives the reader a summary of everything that they're about to read. Much less detail necessarily, but still a picture of what is going to happen in the entire article. The first main section that we come to is the introduction. And in the introduction, what you're going to be doing is, this is what outlines the problem that is going to be investigated. This is what communicates to your reader what is the question that you're going to be looking at, what is the purpose of this paper. Why does this paper exist? What is it trying to answer? What information is it going to try to provide? So it outlines the problem that's being investigated. It mentions past research and theories that are relevant to the problem, and it describes those in detail. This is very important. This gives the reader the context that they need in order to understand everything that is going to happen later on in the story. So this is almost like tapping somebody into the either the genre of a movie, or making sure that they've at least heard about the previous the prequels to the particular movie. So if you have no idea what's going on in the movie, let's say that you just walk into a theater and you don't even know what movie you're watching, and on the screen all of a sudden flashes the words, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Well, then when you start seeing spaceships and lasers, you're not going to be surprised, because you understand that this is a sci-fi movie. It happens in a galaxy far away. So you're ready for it. Your mind is prepared. Same thing with past research and theories relevant to the problem. You're going to make sure that you explain to the reader, this is what you need to know in order to understand what's coming next. So if somebody, if you're walking into The Rise of Skywalker, right? We'll keep with the Star Wars example. If you're taking a friend to go see The Rise of Skywalker, and you ask them, what do you think of the first 2 movies? And they're like, oh, I've never seen it. Well, then you better give them an introduction, and you better say, all right, well, there's this character, Rey, and nobody knows anything about her, and then they did all this kind of stuff, and all this other things happened. You need to give them the background theories so they can understand what's coming up and what's going on next. And then your introduction ends with a formal hypothesis. It ends with a deduction that says, if these theories are true, and we put subjects into the experimental situation that we're going to put them in, then we should find this behavior. We should find this result. So it ends with that formal statement that says, if this is true, and we do what we're about to do, we should find this result, this behavior. And that is that logical format, and it's connecting your past research and your theory to your current research problem and your current expected results, your prediction. And you need to draw that line. This is part of the reason why deduction is so important, because saying if this is true and we do this particular experiment, we should find this is reasoning from theories to a prediction. That's deduction. That's your final step in your introduction. So the introduction is the first thing that they read. Typically, the introduction is either going to be the second last thing you write, or it's going to be the last thing you write. So different people differ on when they write the introduction, but they definitely don't write it first. And typically what you write first, and what we're going to write first, is what comes after the introduction, which is the method section. So the method section, that's the second major part of the research paper. This is where you detail the methods of your research, you detail the methods of your experiment, and this is where you give the reader enough information so they know exactly how the study was conducted, and also enough information where if they wanted to, they could replicate the study. So the best analogy for the method section is it's a recipe from a cookbook. And the same way that the recipe in a cookbook says, here's the ingredients that you need, and here's how you combine them all so you can bake this cake. The method section is going to say, here's the ingredients that you need. We have these subjects, we have these apparatuses and stimuli, and here's how you combine it. Here's the procedure we go through in order to produce the experiment that we did. So the sections in this are going to be a section on subjects. So as we go through this, writing this, any information that you are not aware of or could not be aware of, I will provide to you. So for example, the number of subjects, the characteristics of those subjects, I will give you that information. Materials or apparatus, you have access now to the list of words. You know the materials that were used because you participated in it, so it was a pencil and paper handout. Images were projected on a screen. I will give you the details about how many seconds, how many, time for recall and all that. But these are basically the ingredients that we used. And then you have the procedure, a step-by-step description of how they did, how we did this experiment. So for example, we showed one list at a time. At the end of the list, people received 2 minutes to write down as many words as they could in any order, not in a particular order, but in any order. During that time, they also had to rate confidence scales, confidence for each word on a scale of 1 to 4. Not 1 to 10, not 1 to 20, we used 1 to 4. So you want to give enough details so that somebody reading our experiment, if they said, you know what, I want to redo that experiment, they would know how to redo it. They would have enough information to replicate that experiment. All right, so this is typically the first section that we write. It's going to be the first section that you write as well, because outside of some of the details that I will be providing for you very shortly, we already know enough to write the method section. You know enough about what was done, you know enough about the apparatus, I'll give you the details on some of the things that you don't, and you know enough about the subjects to write up the method section. So this is going to be the first section we do, and it's going to be about 2.5 pages long. After that, the next section we write is going to be the results section. And the results section is where you finally present the findings of your research. And by findings, we mean exactly that. What did you find, but not what does it mean? So the results are what did you find. The discussion section is what does it all mean. So make sure that you keep that very separate. We present the findings of our research without interpretation, without telling the reader what it all means. So the three ways that we're going to present these, we're going to present a description in narrative form. We are then going to present statistical language to back up our descriptions. And then we're also going to use tables and graphs to make it easy to follow. So you can see here I have a graph here that illustrates the stimuli that I was using, and there was another graph that illustrated the results as well. That makes it easy to understand. The best analogy I can think of for the results section is it is very difficult to understand. It's typically the most challenging section whenever you're reading a research report. So even today, it's the one I have to go through the slowest because it is the most challenging one to understand. So because of that, we're going to use techniques that have been developed to help people who have a hard time understanding stories to understand stories. And the biggest population of individuals who have trouble understanding stories are little children. So there's a reason little children's books use repetition, because it's easy to understand. Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? Papa Bear's porridge was too hot. Mama Bear's porridge was too cold. Baby Bear's porridge was just right. We're going to use those descriptions and statistical language, and we're going to repeat it in a very repetitive structure to help our minds understand it better. And much like a children's book, we're going to use pictures. We're going to use as many pictures as we can to basically say, well, this group scored higher than this group, and if you're having trouble understanding it, here's a nice little picture, a nice little graph to help you, much like a children's book would, where it says Goldilocks entered the cabin, and you show Goldilocks entering a cabin to help them make sense of what's going on. So that's what I want you to think of when we're writing the results section. We're going to use that. We're going to use repetition. We're going to use pictures to make it as easy as possible to understand. All right, and then final section is the discussion section. This is the one we're going to write third. So we're going to write the methods, then we're going to write the results, then we're going to write the discussion, then we're going to circle back and we're going to write the introduction. So we're going to write this, and different people differ on, do they write the introduction first and then the discussion section? I like writing the discussion section. It's almost like your research report is a mystery novel, and you want to figure out which theory is the murderer, right? Which theory done it? Is it this theory that's correct, or is it this theory that's correct? And like most good murder mystery novels, the author works out the ending first and then writes the beginning to make it, as understandable a story as possible. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to work out the ending first. And now the discussion section is where you present the conclusions of your research. Results is where you present what you found. Discussion is where you present what it all means. So you present the conclusions of your research. You mention whether your results supported the hypothesis you came up with in the introduction or whether it didn't. And this is one reason why you want to write this first, so you know what hypothesis was supported and which one wasn't. You indicate to the reader whether your results fit with previous theories or whether they don't. So do they support the theories that came before, or do our results contradict these theories, meaning that new theories are required? So you have to say what parts of the theories are supported, what parts are not supported, which results are in line with theories, which results are not. And then you tie it in with, or you expand on it with implications of the research. So what does this mean for the body of psychology as a whole, right? What does this mean in terms of applying it to the real world? So this is where I want you to think of and try to see examples of group cognition and group memory in the real world. So once again, here would be where we would write What does our research have to say about how the jury system should work? Is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? What weaknesses is it prone to? What does our research have to say about how study groups work? Are they a problem in an area like psychology where there's a lot of sort of myths that abound in psychology? So if you ever wonder, how did people ever get the idea that we only use 10% of our brains? Maybe it's this kind of idea of group memory. So we're going to look at, this is where you point the implications of your research. What does it all mean? For this class, we're going to focus on real-world applications. It's a little bit easier than theoretical implications, but you can do both, but we're going to focus on practical implications. And then the last thing you want to do is you want future research directions. You want to let the reader know what is the next step, and you want to let them know why you want to take that next step. So for us, the number of next steps are infinite, right? Research is never going to be done. Nobody's ever going to run an experiment and say, oh, that's it, I'm done psychology. We can move on to something else. No, there's always the next step. There's always that next future research direction. And you need reasons. You need to basically tell them, oh, I want to look at this. I want to look at autistic children, because that will test whether or not this group memory effect is due to social interaction versus, other forces. I want to take a look at pictures, because that will let us know whether this group memory effect has anything to do with verbal communication, or is it just a kind of more general conceptual, type of communication. You need the reasons to do it, and this is basically, science has been doing this all along. But the best analogy I can come up with future research directions is this is that end credit scene that sets up the sequel. And it basically gets your reader excited for, oh wow, I can't wait to see this next piece of research. So the MCU kind of introduced that to kind of the mainstream audience. Science has been doing it all along, so we're going to keep going with it because it just kind of works. It kind of gets into the reader's mind and says, you know what, they keep thinking about it and they keep saying, that's a interesting thing, I want to see how it all works out. All right, so that's the discussion section. Any questions about this this is just like a general overview. Once we get to writing each section, I'll go into more depth in terms of what is expected and also tips on how to write each of these sections. But this was just an intro, general overview of everything. Any questions on this or comments, stuff you want to know? Makes sense so far? Doesn't seem too scary? Good.